is like, oh, let's work out all the kinks of cocaine, and here you got speed. So, but the real thing I want to say is like why it's amazing to go cold turkey off of booze is like that's what killed Amy Winehouse, they say. It's just like going hard, like your body is just can't handle it, and and you could die from it if just quitting booze.
It's one of the only ones that you can die, right? To go off cold turkey.
I think so. I can't make any medical statements, but yeah, it's kind of crazy, dude. So you go out, you get sober 3 months, bang, and now you relapse.
Yeah, relapse, and like we're saying, I went right back to it, going hard. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I had about a 2-week run, and I realized like, I'm starting to fall back into this. I was starting to feel like my head would go numb. It was just crazy. So I try to stop, and I have a couple days where I'm doing okay, and then I had some stuff starting to happen that were like classic DT kind of things where some auditory hallucinations at night.
Oh,
like
shit.
just yeah, so stuff I had like been through that before, so I was like I think I got this, but it got progressively worse. So what kind of ended up happening was as it got worse, it got more like, I would just say demonic. Like well, there's no way that this had become like a psychosis kind of thing, and it obviously there's probably some medical definition, right? But it gets crazier. And so I'm having these experiences, and it's only at night where I'm having these auditory hallucinations, and I'm starting to have visual hallucinations on like the second day, and I'm starting to like live through this like literal hellish manifestation in my mind on Earth. So I'm like seeing demons, and I'm hearing things, and the way that like I was differentiating between whether or not it was some sort of thing, my mind playing a trick on me or not, was like I was having these like I was hearing voices of like childhood friends I didn't even remember like years back, and it just got really crazy until the third night. So this happened for three days. It got progressively worse. And on the third night, I was laying in bed, and my body was contorting and like twisting itself, almost like in an Exorcist movie. And I was like being remote controlled by this thing I could see outside of myself that was like a shape-shifting ghost thing. And it had been, I was able to sort of like pinpoint all of these things that were happening onto this being, right? So I was doing this sort of contorting thing and this kind of craziness. And what ends up happening is it tells me to like walk over, to get out of bed and to go to the mirror. And so I go over to the mirror, and it's like telling me to get on my hands and knees and to like bow to the mirror where I'm looking at myself. And I can't not do what it says. And
what did it sound like? What did the voice sound like?
It was, if I had to say what it sounded like if somebody was talking into like a walkie-talkie into a radio, to the point to where I thought that like
burger one now.
yeah, like literally, yeah.
Wow.
And so I start doing this, and I look up into the mirror, and my whole being is now like a stereotypical demon with horns and flames. And I started like peeing myself because I was so scared. And my family's Catholic. I was raised Catholic. So at this time, I had kind of gotten away from any Christianity or any sort of spiritualism. I would consider myself like a nihilist, kind of. And the weirdest thing was it told me to walk outside. So I walk outside of my parents' house, and in their front yard, they have this big statue of Jesus in the middle of their yard. And it is like remote controlling me to walk up to it. And as I walk up to it, it tells me to look up, and I look up into this sky and I see the stars and they're like as bright as possible. And then I just started screaming as loud as humanly possible. It's like 3 a.m. And then so my parents come out and they kind of get me. And then that's kind of the end of part of it. So I don't want to keep talking. I want you guys to interject or if any thoughts or anything.
Please.
I don't know.
I mean, we're gripped.
all about
We're all about it.
So you were
Okay.
like just possessed, do you think?
Yeah. So I later came to this term because I've been kind of trying to make sense of what happened since this happened, 19 months ago or whenever it was, a year and a half ago. Because I've gone through so many iterations of trying to figure out what it is that I'm now of the theory that I was like possessed. Because before I would have for sure been like it was a psychotic episode and whatever, but I'm fully convinced I was possessed now. So what ends up happening is I kind of have a no pun intended come to Jesus moment with my parents. I'm like, hey, I need to go to rehab. And my parents had already scheduled me to leave for rehab that Friday. It was a Wednesday. This went into like Wednesday morning. I kind of was able to sleep. And during the day, I felt completely fine. Like I wasn't having any symptoms during the day. That was the weird thing, was like during the day, I was fine. At night, I was having these horrific hallucinations and stuff. So it's Wednesday. I'm going to rehab Friday. They're like, okay, let's get through these last day and a half, 2 days, and we'll be good. So I go to work that day and I'm kind of glossing over a ton of details. I had like an episode at work where I was like hearing things in the vents and I had like left in a hurry and a bunch of other stuff. I'm kind of streamlining this. So anyways, it gets to be Wednesday night, and Wednesday night is when everything sort of like becomes it like all happens, I guess, so to speak. So I come home from work and I look into my room, my bedroom, and in the middle of the room is this, it looks like if you hit your head and you're seeing stars. It looks like that, like a tunnel of that in the middle of the room. And I didn't hear anything all day, was completely fine. I immediately started hearing music and people, these demonic voices mocking like Mary and Jesus, specifically Mary a lot, which I thought was weird because I wasn't a Christian anymore. Like I didn't associate with that any longer. And so I'm like, this is like really weird. Cause I'm like, oh, is this happening again? Long story short, I'm home for a couple of hours. I'm kind of, out of it, tripping a little. And I go to bed, and my parents are having me sleep on the couch in the middle of the living room so they can kind of keep an eye on me. And, it just all kind of starts to happen. I'm laying on my back and I proceeded to like get up, and I'm screaming, but I'm watching iterations of myself get up, and I'm running around the living room screaming, but I'm seeing these different iterations of me, almost like an infinite thread of myself. And there's versions of me that are passing on and like dying, and I'm seeing my parents tend to different realities of me, right? So, and I'm while I'm running around screaming, what I'm experiencing in my mind is
are you off the couch or are you laying on the couch seeing this? So apparently I was running around the house screaming. Okay.
But I am feeling, the best way to describe it is like if you could experience everything everywhere all at once.
Damn.
So that's like what I would describe
movie,
it.
right? That's the
Yeah.
movie. Yes, I get that.
And so as this is happening, I'm experiencing in the main part of this, there's the sun. And like I'm the sun. And there's a Komodo dragon serpent that's black. It's just darkness. It's the scariest thing ever. And it's trying to wrestle this sun that is both inside of me and outside of me. And it's all consuming. There is no it's just everything, and everything in me is wrestling this as I'm contorting and running around the room screaming, but I'm also seeing all of these different iterations of me. And I remember this one part in particular that was so crazy, was in my parents' living room. There's, they're Catholic, so they have like, pictures of my uncles who'd passed and stuff. And like, there's specifically, we have this angel stainless steel thing, and it's blonde. My mom is blonde. And I looked at that, and it was like, I was like, oh, that's my mom. Everything makes sense. Everything starts to click. And I'm like, this is like a cosmic symphony. Like, this makes sense. My soul is fighting this demon and all this stuff, and I'm experiencing this. And then what happens is I finally collapse onto the couch. And when I collapse, I see Jesus Christ, and I see him in the in a garden. And the thing that really stands out to me is he looks like everything you ever think he would and nothing at the same time. So you've specifically had guests on your show who say that he's like a shapeshifter or whatever. And I don't think that's perfectly accurate, but he looks like you think he looks like, but you also can't see his face at the same time. And he looks at me, and he's crying, and he says, "This is what I needed to put you through." I'm getting chills on it. He's like, "This is what I needed to put you through for you to come back to me." And I'm like, oh, damn. And then I see like heaven. And I see like there's like angels breaking down rules of heaven, and you can feel the exaltation of God. And it's not like he's there. Like, it's undeniable. That's your dad. Like, that's your dad, and he's there, and he's watching everything you do. And I noticed I was trying to talk to people there, and I'm talking how I talk. So I'm like, this is fucking crazy. and when you speak, the words come out of your mouth and they're gold. But if you'd curse, it was lead and it would fall. So you had to talk like super slow and pick the perfect verbiage. And I specifically saw the statue in Isaiah where it has the different types of metal. And these are things I haven't thought of the Bible in a decade at this point. I haven't thought of, like, I'm not praying. I'm not doing any of this. And, so sorry, this is just a lot. So all of this is happening. And at the time, the ambulance is working on me, the EMTs, I'm sorry. And they're like, what is he on? Like, he's on something. Like, he's like, so this guy's out of his fucking mind. And so my parents are like, he hasn't taken anything in like at least a few days. Like, we know for sure, unless he snuck something. So that was kind of that part.
Now, hold on.
Let you guys
Do you think you died right there?
So what ended up happening was I was going into cardiac arrest.
What?
Yeah, so I was going into cardiac arrest from alcohol withdrawals. What ends up happening is, at this time, I had a girlfriend at the time, or I still do. I don't know why I said at the time.
Do you want to say this now in case you listen?
Yeah.
What do you mean at the time?
Right.
You still do. You're okay.
So this is the weird part is, and she didn't even tell me this for a while, but as this is happening, she sees me appear in her room, as like not a ghost, but I'm in her room, and she's extremely Christian, and that like totally freaked her out. And so this is all happening.
She was at her house, and you appeared.
Like, yeah, like I appeared in her room
at this time when this was going down. Damn.
At any moment, do you remember in that near-death experience that you would have gone to your girlfriend's room? Like, if you were dying, you think you subconsciously would have been like, oh, I need to go check up on my girlfriend, I'm dying?
Well, so like the weird thing is that kind of connects to where this leads is I am now in like communication with like a higher version of myself. So like I'm kind of in this, like I would say heaven. And then what happens is I get to the hospital. My heart rate was at 170, and I was going into cardiac arrest. And they're kind of bringing me back. And one of the weird things that happened was I started flexing all of my muscles, and I'm not really like there. I'm like not mentally awake. I'm experiencing all of this in my head. And I started doing this. It's called the Volsuva maneuver. That's what this doctor told me. And I started flexing all of my muscles and contracting and then releasing. And I don't know what that is. I had never known what that was. And
it's the vagus nerve, right? It stimulates the vagus nerve. That's what you're doing.
There's a vagus nerve?
VAGUS, yeah.
Yeah, and it like slows down your heart rate.
That's right.
And so I had been instructed by, when XG says like, would I be talking to my girlfriend? Like she was talking to me, like her higher dimensional self was communicating with me. And like, I would say like versions of me and angels are telling me to do this, and I'm doing it, and it's slowing my heart rate. And at this time, like I'm experiencing, the only thing I could say is like a reincarnation thing where I'm going through different realities and shifting into the one where I don't die.
Oh, that's so interesting. I think it's funny that you went to your girlfriends, because even in like death, we got to check in with our girlfriends, make sure they're not pissed. They're like, hey, I'm just over here dying. I'm not talking to chicks. I just got to check in real quick. And that's super interesting that, you know, because we've had guests on before. They talked about trans surfing, which is what I believe Everything Everywhere All at Once is all about. And which is that there's a million versions of you. You just got to figure out how far away from that version you are, if that's the version you want. Like there is a way for you to become president. Somehow, some way, we could figure that out. There is a way. Even though laws are against it, but we'd still figure it out, right? In some dimension. But obviously, you found a dimension where you survived this shit.
Yeah, and it was funny because I remember all of this is happening, and I'm like asking questions because I'm now out of this sort of like heaven realm, and I'm like in the hospital, and I'm able to communicate with something, and I'm asking, I was like, what's the meaning of everything? Like what's the secret? And it was, oh, everything is music. And when that was told to me, everything was like a song, like everything, like there was a beeping monitor and it became like the beat and like the doctor's talking. I was like, oh, this is like everything's a symphony. Like, and every little thing made sense of my whole life. Like, oh, it sounds so crazy, but it's like, oh, I was number 13 when I played junior All-American football, and that coincides with and it's like everything begins to make sense. And I remember one of the funniest things is because like this show has had a massive impact on my life, and in a very positive way. And I remember it said like, yeah, Sam's like he's pretty much right about like most stuff.
Whoa.
And
Thank you. Can you clip that? I love that. Thank you.
And I've kind of tried to figure that out of what that means. And I think what it is like your idea of like everything being a movie where everything is happening. It's like that's real. There's like a quantum level to that where that is real. At least I think, because like when I say like I experienced this, it literally was like everything. I can't explain enough. Like I remember at one point I like saw a reflection of me and I was like a reptilian, and then I like bounced to this other plane where I'm like, I don't even know. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I think it's amazing. And I really do believe that is like, I mean, we just had somebody coming on talking about different dimensions, higher dimensions, lower dimensions. That's why I tell you it's all possible. There's no one explanation.